One thing I'd like to apologize for is how awkward and cringy my voiceovers are. I'm very sorry. I'm not used to making these types of videos. Also, spoiler alert for The Shining and Doctor Sleep, which you should have watched beforehand. If you haven't, leave the video and watch them right now. But back to the video. Doctor Sleep, a movie that came out in 2019, and I'm getting to it quite late because I'm very lazy and I record these videos very slowly. It takes me a while to do this. But it's the sequel to The Shining, which was released in 1980 and directed by Stanley Kubrick. But this time Doctor Sleep is directed by Mike Flanagan. Stephen King wrote a novel in 2011, also titled Doctor Sleep, acting as the sequel to his famous novel, The Shining. Of course, I don't know why I'm saying this again. You probably know this stuff already. But, of course, I have to say something about this. I actually don't see the point of there being a sequel for The Shining. The whole beauty of The Shining was the mystery behind it. That you didn't know what is going to happen to the characters, and all you could do is talk to your friends about your theories and discuss it. And that's what I love about The Shining. There's a lot to discuss, and this just kind of takes out the mystery, because in the movie they explain a little bit of what The Shining is. I still didn't quite understand it, but I still kind of wish that I knew almost nothing about the story of The Shining so that I can have my own little theories about it. But there's nothing I can do about it. Stephen King made it. We have to accept it. That's my opinion. I think the sequel's kind of pointless, but to each their own. Here's a quick little rundown of what happened in the movie if you can't remember it like me. Danny Torrance, played by Ewan McGregor, is an alcoholic like his father. He ends up moving to a small town in New Hampshire and makes friends with this guy Billy Freeman that finds him an apartment. Dan starts rehabilitating and finds a job in a hospice where he gets the nickname Dr. Sleep from this dying old man. Very dark, I know. Meanwhile, there's this group of other people that can shine, called the True Knot, but they use their powers to consume other people's shine so they can live longer. Dan meets this girl named Abra, with whom he communicates like him and Dick Halloran used to, aka they just don't say a word, they just look at each other and they can hear each other. It's weird, but you know what I mean. You get it. You've seen the movie. Blah blah blah, Dan and Abra become friends and unite to destroy the True Knot. They end up killing everyone but Rose, and in order to do so, Danny has to lure her back to the Overlook Hotel. A few dope references later, Rose is defeated but at a cost. The Overlook has to burn, which is a cool little nod to Stephen King's The Shining novel, after which Dan ends up dying in the fire. Now that we all remember and know what happened, it's time to talk about my opinion, which is what this video is about. In short, I really liked the movie. I didn't love it. It wasn't amazing. It was just pretty good. I think it did The Shining justice, and it's fair to say that it's a worthy sequel to it. Maybe I don't have enough experience with movies to know what a good movie is, but everyone has opinions, and this one is mine. As I said before, I don't see the point of a sequel to The Shining, as it takes some of the mystery out and the fun of just talking about your theories with your friends. But if you really want to get to the bottom of the story and really, really understand what happened, it adds some level of clarity to the whole story of The Shining, which I must say I never understood and probably will never understand either, and I kind of also don't want to understand it much. But that's what makes The Shining such a good movie. It's just the ambiguity at the end, the fact that it keeps people talking still almost 40 years later. Either way, back to Dr. Sleep. Let's start off with the cast, because that's like the easiest thing to talk about. The cast was amazing. The actors were great. Ewan McGregor slaying it, as always. The girl who played Abra, I'm sorry I can't remember her name. I'll put her name up on the screen. She was amazing. Like, top notch. I can't stress how great she was enough. But I have a little comment about the people that were supposed to play the older characters. So like the people who had to play Wendy and Jack, they were a little bit, let's just say they were a little bit off, because it's basically impossible to look like Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, because they're very, I don't know how to say this, very specific looking people. Like, you look at one of them and you can just tell it's them. You can't confuse them with someone else. Even though when I was younger, I used to confuse Jack Nicholson with Jack Black. I don't know how that happens.
No, 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 no.
I have one just tiny problem with Wendy. The girl who played Wendy, this is gonna sound really bad, but she was too pretty to play Wendy. I mean, look, Shelley Duvall isn't the prettiest woman I've ever seen. No offense, but I mean, she's not ugly, but she just ain't what you would usually think of when you say pretty. But this woman was just way too pretty. That's the only way I could put it. She was too pretty to play Wendy Torrance. I don't know, that's my only problem. They also sampled an audio file of Wendy saying something. I can't remember what it was, but I'm pretty sure that they sampled something from The Shining and put it in. The guy who played Jack, he was fine. His hair was basically the same, but I don't know, he wasn't creepy enough. I mean, no one can be any creepier than Jack Nicholson. Let's just be honest, but I don't know. I think those are all the problems that I have with the cast. The cinematography, I'm just not qualified to talk about it, but one thing I can tell you is what I've seen with my eyes. When I watched Joker in cinemas, I just couldn't help but notice how beautiful everything looked, and when I watched The Irishman on Netflix, I just looked at it and I was like, that's just pretty. That's one of the first things that I've seen in both of those movies that were also released this year, is just how gorgeous they are. But with Dr. Sleep, it didn't catch my eye like the other ones. It's nothing too special. I feel like it was too dark. Even The Shining was brighter, even though most of this movie takes place at night and in dark rooms. But I don't know, they could have done better. I think they had a pretty big budget. They could have done a lot better with the cinematography. On somewhat the same note, talking about how the movie looked, the set of The Overlook. Absolutely stunning. It looks almost the exact same as it did in The Shining. The only difference is that it looks old and dusty and rotten. Also, that scene when they're driving up the mountain to go to the Overlook in Dr. Sleep and it's night, I think I've heard that they just rendered it to be night, so they CGI'd it to be night. They took the scene from The Shining and they made it to look like it was nighttime. I don't know. I thought they actually reshot it, which would have been absolutely amazing. One thing that I have to mention about this movie is the amount of attention to detail that they put into it. When Danny walks into the bar, we're going back to that scene, Jack's whiskey glass is right there. Now, we don't actually see Jack leave the whiskey glass there. We don't even know the whiskey glass was real, because we all know Lloyd isn't, and there's no drinks in the bar. But either way, that was a nice touch. I'm still wondering if the papers actually say all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. That would have been so cool if Rosie would have read them and we would have seen it. That would have been amazing. I would have lost my shit. Most of my favorite parts were in The Overlook. Actually, my favorites were only in The Overlook. But I have to say that the best out of all of them was the way that they shot Rosie going towards Danny on the stairs. But another great one was the bar scene, which is also one of my favorites in The Shining as well. Jack being the bartender was actually an interesting twist, because you look at it and you just have this expectation of it to be Lloyd like it is in The Shining, but the guy looks like Jack. So you're kind of like, is it Jack? Is it Lloyd? But I don't think we have any confirmation that the bartender's name was actually Jack and not Lloyd. I like the fact that Danny didn't give into Jack's temptation, which shows that he is stronger than him. Probably not in that sense, just saying. But another thing that I've been thinking about is how Wendy died, because I don't think it's mentioned anywhere in the novels, but I've read somewhere online that she died of lung cancer. But then again, I haven't read any of the novels and I'm not really planning to either. One of the greatest things about The Shining was the way that it built up tension. For example, not showing why the characters are scared of immediately, but instead just building up the suspense by showing their reaction first, and then showing what they were actually scared of, which is pretty genius. I'm sorry there's no audio, but it got corrupted, but I guess you know how the scene goes. The music just gets louder when he sees the twins. I think the audio on this one is fucked up too. I'm sorry. There's just something wrong with my clips in Premiere. I don't know what's going on. Dr. Sleep used the same techniques but also used the same sounds and music, which helped keep the same vibe from The Shining. There's this one sound that I've noticed that popped up a lot throughout Dr. Sleep that is borrowed from The Shining, in which it also pops up a lot. But in The Shining, I remember that it comes up when Danny goes upstairs to get his fire engine while Jack is supposedly asleep. I'll play it for you right now.
Billy?
I know it's not quite the same, but it's the same rhythm and it's used the exact same way, so it's basically the exact same thing. One last thing I'd like to mention before I end the video is all the references that it has to The Shining, so we're just gonna quickly go through them right now. The first one would be the lady in the tub. I don't know how much of a reference this is necessarily, but I'm just gonna count it in. Dr. Dalton's office. It looks exactly like Mr. Ullman's office. I think that's his name, yes. They look the exact same. The things that look the same are the flag, the coffee cup, the pen, the red book that's on his desk. There's a lot of things that pop up. Also, the color of the walls is almost the exact same. The window behind him and the way they framed the shots are the exact same, and the same way that the interview scene in The Shining looked.